Cheerleaders humiliate black girl at prom, unaware her father owns the school district. They thought she was just the quiet girl in the background. The one no one would notice. The one who didn't belong on their stage. But when a group of high school cheerleaders pulled a cruel prank on prom night, they had no idea who they were really messing with. Behind the soft smile and calm eyes was a girl raised with quiet power, and a father who held more influence than they ever imagined. What started as a joke would soon unravel reputations, shake the school's foundation, and leave the whole town talking. Stay with us, this is not just a story about revenge. It's about grace, dignity, and what happens when truth walks back into the room. What if a group of high school cheerleaders humiliated the wrong girl, one they thought didn't belong, one they mocked under the lights of prom night, not knowing the quiet girl in the blue dress had a father with the power to change everything. This is the story of Leah Carter, a soft-spoken honor student who just wanted one peaceful night, but found herself at the center of a cruel joke. A joke that would unravel the false crowns of popularity and expose the cracks beneath a perfect facade. Stay with this story because what begins with laughter at her expense will end with a silence that echoes louder than any applause. Leah Carter stood in front of the mirror in her bedroom, slowly smoothing the soft blue fabric of her prom dress. It was classic, elegant, her mother's pick. Not flashy like the sequined gowns she'd seen at Macy's, but graceful, almost like something from a 1950s movie. The way it hugged her waist, the way it flowed at the bottom. It felt like dignity sewn into silk. Her father, David Carter, leaned against the doorframe, tie half done, watching her with that quiet kind of pride only a father could carry. "You look like your mother when we went to Howard's winter formal," he said softly, adjusting the gold cuff link on his left sleeve. Leah Carter smiled. "You always say that, and I'll keep saying it until you believe me." Their house sat just outside Mon, Georgia, in a quiet cul-de-sac where oaks draped Spanish moss over fences and neighbors waved even when they didn't know your name. Their home was modest brick, 2 stories with creaky wooden floors and photographs lining the hallway. Savannah's honor roll awards, her dance recital, and of course, photos of David Carter in various city meetings. Few at her high school knew who he really was. Chairman of the Bibb County School Board. A man who spoke little but listened a lot. Leah Carter never bragged. That wasn't her way. Tonight was the senior prom at Riverside High, a mostly white upper-middle-class school known for its award-winning football team and cheerleading squad. Leah Carter had been a student there since sophomore year. She kept her head down, earned straight A's, joined the environmental club, and quietly got nominated for prom queen. A surprise even to her. What wasn't a surprise was the look Sloan Whitmore gave her when the announcement was made last week. Sloan Whitmore, the golden-haired captain of the cheer team, daughter of a prominent dentist and homecoming queen since junior year, had worn that forced smile, the kind that didn't reach her eyes. Leah Carter had seen it before. In Georgia, racism rarely screamed. It whispered. It lived in the tight grins, the polite exclusion, the group chat she wasn't in. Leah Carter knew the rules. Smile. Stay quiet. Be excellent. Tonight, she wasn't there to make a statement. She was just there to have one night where she felt seen. At the venue, the Anderson Hall Civic Center, a converted barn with white string lights and rustic wooden floors. Leah Carter arrived alone. Her best friend Jade Robinson had caught the flu. Her father had offered to wait outside in the car, but she insisted he go home. She didn't want to draw attention. Inside, the music pulsed with a steady rhythm. Pop hits and slow R&B mixed by a senior with a Spotify playlist. The air smelled of cologne and hairspray. Girls in heels posed for pictures under the balloon arch. Boys awkwardly adjusted their ties. Leah Carter walked to her table near the corner, sipped ginger ale, and tried to enjoy the moment. Then the lights dimmed. The DJ's voice came over the speaker. "Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to announce your 2025 prom queen." The room held its breath. Leah Carter glanced toward Sloan Whitmore and the cheerleaders in the center table, all clustered like something out of a CW teen show. "And this year's queen is Leah Carter." A brief silence, then polite applause. Leah Carter blinked. She rose, stunned, and walked to the stage, heels clicking softly. A teacher handed her a plastic tiara. Someone adjusted the mic. She opened her folded speech, just a few lines thanking her classmates and teachers. Her voice trembled as she leaned toward the microphone, but the words that came out weren't hers. The crowd gasped, then laughed. Not a small giggle. A loud, rolling, cruel laugh. Her voice echoed through the speakers, but twisted. Someone had replaced her speech. The voice that played was robotic, mocking, and said things Leah Carter would never say. Thanks y'all for letting a ghetto girl like me pretend to be royalty tonight. Don't worry, I'll try not to steal the crown. More laughter. Shout out to the cafeteria ladies for always making chicken on Thursdays. You know, 'cause that's what we like. Leah Carter froze. Her heart dropped to the floor. Her ears rang. The teacher standing beside her looked horrified, fumbling to cut the mic, but the damage was done. She stared into the crowd. Some students looked away in shame, others stifled laughs. Sloane Whitmore, she was smirking. Savannah's hands trembled. She dropped the paper. The tiara slipped off her head. She turned and walked off the stage. She didn't run. She walked, shoulders square, face blank. The room fell silent. Outside, the night air was cool. Somewhere in the distance, she heard the sound of cicadas humming like they had no idea the world had just split open for a 17-year-old girl. She didn't cry until she reached her car. She sat there for 20 minutes, not moving, not talking, not thinking, just sitting in the dark, still in her prom dress as shame and disbelief poured down like invisible rain. At 11:42 p.m., she finally pulled out her phone and texted her father. "Savannah, can you come get me?" He didn't ask why. He didn't need to. 20 minutes later, she was in the passenger seat of his old Toyota Camry, staring out the window, her tiara still on the floor of the car. David Carter glanced over. "You okay?" She didn't answer. They drove in silence, the road home stretching long and empty. Back at the house, she went straight upstairs. She peeled off the dress like it was made of thorns and sat on the edge of her bed in an old hoodie and sweatpants. There was a knock at the door. "Come in," she whispered. David Carter stepped in holding 2 mugs of hot cocoa. He handed one to her and sat beside her. "They humiliated me," she said, her voice barely audible in front of everyone. He nodded, took a slow sip. "Do you know who did it?" She stared ahead. "I don't need to. I know the laugh. I saw her face." He didn't ask who. After a moment, he said, "You want to fight back?" Leah Carter shook her head. "No," she said quietly. "I want her to destroy herself. I just have to let her keep digging." David Carter chuckled softly, pride flickering behind his eyes. "You're your mother's daughter." Leah Carter didn't smile. She just stared at the wall and whispered, "I'm going back to school tomorrow." He looked at her surprised. "You sure?" She nodded. "She wants me to disappear, but I want her to watch me walk in." Leah Carter stepped out of her father's car the next morning, backpack slung over one shoulder, hoodie zipped up halfway, and her curls pulled into a neat bun. The late spring airmen still held a touch of morning cool, but the sun was already high, casting long shadows across the parking lot of Riverside High. She could feel them. Eyes from behind car windows, across the courtyard, through classroom doors cracked just enough to allow whispers to slip out. No one spoke directly to her, but everyone was watching. The girl from last night, the one whose speech turned into a racist joke. The one who didn't scream, didn't run, didn't fight back, the one who left without a word. She walked through the main doors slowly, deliberately. Her heartbeat thudded in her ears, but her face stayed calm, unreadable. She passed Sloane Whitmore and the cheer squad at their usual corner near the lockers. Their conversation halted mid-laugh. Sloane Whitmore stared at her, lips pursed into a tight line, but said nothing. Leah Carter didn't look away. She held her gaze a second too long, long enough to make Sloane Whitmore shift her weight uncomfortable like a queen who just felt her throne creak beneath her. In first period English, Mr. Bennett greeted her with an extra soft, "Good morning, Savannah," and a pause in his tone that said more than words could. He knew, everyone knew, but no one quite knew what to do with it. She sat in her seat, opened her notebook, and pretended it was any other day. Around her, pencils scratched, pages turned, but the silence was heavier than usual, thicker. By lunch, the weight of unspoken words had turned into murmurs. She walked into the cafeteria like always, tray in hand, head high. She bypassed the back tables where the orchestra kids sat, past the science club corner and the jocks at the long table near the vending machines. The cheerleaders were still in their central spot like royalty in exile, smiling too hard, laughing too loud. As Leah Carter moved past them, she caught a fragment of a whisper. "She's just trying to make us feel guilty." Another voice. "She should have known better than to run for prom queen anyway." Leah Carter didn't react. She sat alone, pulled out her sandwich, and began eating. Across the room, Sloane Whitmore watched, her jaw tight, her fingers tapping the table in an uneven rhythm. She had expected Leah Carter to stay home, to cry, to shrink. Instead, the girl came back stronger, quieter, and somehow taller. That unsettled her more than any confrontation would have, because it meant Leah Carter wasn't playing the same game. And when you can't predict someone, you can't control them. Later that afternoon, in the hallway between classes, it started. A printed copy of Savannah's supposed prom speech was taped to her locker. The same cruel fake version from last night. At first, students only glanced. Then, someone laughed. Then another. Phones came out. A few started filming. Leah Carter walked up, looked at it for 2 seconds, then peeled the page off gently, folded it in half, and dropped it into her backpack without a word. Her hands didn't tremble. She didn't look around for support. She simply shut her locker and went to class. That small act, quiet, controlled, spread faster than the mockery. Some students frowned. A few muttered, "That's messed up." Others began to question what kind of person could go that far. Sloane Whitmore felt it. The shift, her power, once effortless, now needed defending, and desperation never smelled good on royalty. That evening, Leah Carter sat at the kitchen table, scrolling through messages she wasn't expecting. A sophomore she barely knew DM'd her on Instagram. "You didn't deserve that." "I'm sorry." A senior from track who had never spoken more than 5 words to her in the halls wrote, "You handled that like a boss." Not a flood of messages, but enough to remind her they were watching. And not everyone was laughing. Her father placed a plate of warm peach cobbler beside her, then sat across the table. "You're getting under their skin," he said with a quiet smile. Leah Carter smirked. "I'm not doing anything." He raised an eyebrow. "Exactly." They ate in silence for a moment. Then she asked, "Dad, what happens when people like Sloane Whitmore get caught?" He set down his fork. "Depends on who's watching and if someone with a voice decides to speak up." The next morning, a new rumor began floating through the school. Someone had accessed the editing software used during prom. They claimed to have screenshots, chat logs, timestamps, Belle's fingerprints on the audio file. It wasn't clear where the leak started, but by third period, students were whispering with more focus, with direction. Something was coming. By Friday, an anonymous envelope appeared on Principal Jameson's desk. Inside evidence enough to prove who tampered with the prom speech. The school went quiet again, but it was a different silence this time, like a deep breath before the wind shifts. In the meantime, Leah Carter kept showing up, kept walking with that same steady pace, kept ignoring the stares, the passive-aggressive smirks, the whispers that now seemed more uncertain than mocking. One afternoon, a group of students from the yearbook club asked if she'd be willing to do a short interview for the senior spread. She agreed, not because she needed the spotlight, but because staying silent forever wasn't strength. It was survival. And she was done surviving. That night, her father came home with a different expression. His usual calm had a flicker of purpose. He poured himself a coffee and sat at the table. They scheduled a special school board meeting for Monday night, he said. Closed door, but community members can attend. Leah Carter looked up from her homework. Why now? David Carter held her gaze. Because the truth has weight, and when people try to bury it, it eventually pushes back. She nodded. Are you going to speak? He leaned back. I haven't decided. She watched him for a moment, then said, You don't have to do it for me, but I think it matters that they see who you are. He smiled. They'll see when the time is right. On Monday, the school buzzed with nervous energy. Flyers had gone out over the weekend. Emergency school board session topic: prom incident investigation. Parents showed up, teachers, a few students, too. Leah Carter came, dressed simply, black slacks, white blouse, her mother's small pearl earrings. She sat near the back, quiet, while whispers rolled through the rows like smoke. When David Carter stood to speak, The room fell still. Many recognized him, but few realized he was Savannah's father until he spoke her name. "I come before you not just as chair of this board, but as a parent of a student who was publicly degraded during an event meant to celebrate our children's achievements." His voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Every syllable was measured, deliberate. "I've seen racism in many forms, some loud, some subtle. What happened Friday night was not a joke. It was a violation of trust, of dignity, and of what this school claims to stand for." Leah Carter sat still, her heart beating a little faster. He continued reading from the evidence. No shouting, no finger-pointing, just facts. Cold, undeniable. By the end of his speech, no one laughed. Not even the teachers who had once turned a blind eye to Sloan Whitmore's behavior. When the board voted to suspend the students involved pending full investigation, there were no objections. Sloan Whitmore's mother stood up in protest, yelling something about overreaction and harmless fun. But the room didn't support her. It had shifted. And in that moment, Leah Carter realized. Her silence had spoken louder than their laughter ever could. The morning after the school board meeting, the atmosphere at Riverside High had changed, though no one dared to say it aloud. It wasn't just the aftermath of a public reckoning. It was the sudden awareness that the rules had shifted. Power no longer sat in the hands of a few girls in matching cheer uniforms. It moved quietly, subtly, and it now orbited around a girl who had never raised her voice. Leah Carter walked through the main hallway like she always did, but there was a new kind of quiet that followed her. Not mockery, not hostility, but a curious, reverent stillness. She wasn't untouchable, but she had become something harder to define. Undeniable. The cheer squad, once a loud and visible force at Riverside, now seemed strangely muted. Sloan Whitmore, who used to glide through the corridors with a wake of laughter and perfectly curated Instagram poses, now kept her head down. She walked fast, flanked only by two loyal girls who looked more nervous than proud. The others had started peeling away. One by one, they unfollowed her on social media. They stopped waiting for her at her locker. Group texts went silent. At lunch, Sloan Whitmore sat in the corner of the cafeteria instead of her usual center table. Leah Carter didn't gloat, didn't stare, didn't even look her way. That absence was louder than confrontation, and it ate away at Sloan Whitmore's carefully built image. More than any speech ever could. In second-period chemistry, Mrs. Keating assigned group work, and for the first time, no one avoided sitting with Savannah. 3 girls from different cliques pulled their chairs toward her lab station. They didn't mention prom. They didn't ask about the school board. But one of them, a girl named Nina Blake, who had voted for Sloan Whitmore for homecoming queen, leaned over at the end of class and whispered, "I'm really glad you didn't disappear." Leah Carter gave a small nod. She didn't need thanks, but she wasn't made of stone either. That afternoon, she found a letter tucked into her locker, handwritten, folded twice. It wasn't signed, but the handwriting was familiar. The words were scribbled in blue ink, shaky like they were pulled out with effort. "I thought I was better than you. And when I realized I wasn't, I got scared. I didn't mean for it to go that far, but I didn't stop it either. I don't expect forgiveness. I just needed you to know that I see you now, and I was wrong." Leah Carter stared at the letter for a long moment before slipping it into her pocket. She didn't need to know which girl it came from. Maybe it didn't matter. Maybe it did. Either way, it meant the cracks had started from within. By Thursday, the rumors had grown legs. Students were talking less about the prank and more about Sloan Whitmore's history. How she'd excluded certain girls from sleepovers. How she'd laughed when a new student with an accent mispronounced a word in English class. How she once posted a meme that made fun of welfare queens on her private Snapchat story. Things that had been brushed off as jokes or overlooked because no one wanted to deal with the fallout were now being remembered with fresh clarity. The hallway was no longer her runway. It had become a corridor of consequences. Leah Carter found herself in the library during lunch, pretending to read, but really just enjoying the quiet. Mrs. Fletcher, the librarian, brought over a cup of chamomile tea without asking. "You're handling all this with more grace than most adults I know," she said softly, then walked away before Leah Carter could respond. She sipped the tea slowly, thinking not of revenge, but of restoration. What does it mean to come back from something like this? What does it mean to stand in front of a crowd that once laughed at you and still choose not to hate? That weekend, Leah Carter and her father took a walk around Amerson River Park, a stretch of winding paths and thick greenery along the Okolgie River. It was one of their favorite places. David Carter walked beside her, hands in his jacket pockets, eyes scanning the trees. "You've been quiet," he said after a while. "Quieter than usual, even for you." Leah Carter kicked a small rock from the path. "I don't know what I'm supposed to feel," she admitted. "Sloan Whitmore's losing everything, her friends, her reputation, and part of me wants to feel bad for her, but another part of me," she paused, searching for the words, "feels nothing at all." David Carter nodded slowly. "You're not obligated to feel anything." He said empathy isn't weakness, but it also isn't a requirement when someone's hurt you. She looked up at him. "You ever feel that way back when you ran for the school board?" He let out a dry laugh. "Plenty of times. People smiled to my face and stabbed me in the back. I learned that sometimes silence is more powerful than shouting because when people expect you to explode and you don't, they start listening." The following Monday, Principal Jameson made an announcement over the intercom during first period. His voice was firm, more direct than usual. "Effective immediately, the administration is reviewing policies regarding student conduct, event oversight, and equity training for all staff and students. No further details can be shared at this time, but actions are being taken. Let us move forward with accountability and compassion." No one mentioned names, but everyone knew. Sloan Whitmore was suspended for 2 weeks. 2 others were benched from cheerleading for the rest of the season. The faculty advisor for the cheer squad quietly resigned. It wasn't a purge. It wasn't vengeance. It was the beginning of something else, an acknowledgement. In the days that followed, Leah Carter noticed small shifts. A classmate held the door for her and said her name, not, "Hey." A boy from her AP government class asked if she'd consider running for student council next fall. A guidance counselor emailed her father to say they wanted to nominate her for the Regional Leadership Award. These weren't grand gestures, but they were signals. The culture had tilted. The old guard was rattled. Sloan Whitmore returned to school 2 weeks later. She looked thinner, tired. The crowd she once led had scattered. She walked into the lunchroom alone. Savannah, sitting at her usual spot by the window, saw her hesitate at the doorway. For a moment, their eyes met. There was no triumph in Savannah's gaze, just recognition, of a girl who had worn the crown and now carried its weight, of someone who had learned too late that cruelty has a cost. Leah Carter turned back to her tray, took a bite of her sandwich, and said nothing. She didn't need to. Her silence had already said it all. Spring moved quietly into summer in Mon, Georgia. The oak trees that lined the streets grew fuller, casting long, dappled shadows across sidewalks. At Riverside High, seniors counted down their last weeks. College decisions were finalized. Yearbooks were signed. Classrooms smelled faintly of dry erase markers and anticipation. For Savannah, those final days passed not with fanfare, but with quiet dignity. She didn't become class president. She wasn't suddenly the most popular girl in school, but people saw her differently now. Less as the quiet girl in the back row and more as the girl who had walked through fire without burning. She hadn't won prom queen, but in a strange way, she'd won something far more lasting. It was a Tuesday morning when Mrs. Fletcher from the library stopped her in the hallway. "The principal wants to speak with you," she said gently. "Don't worry, it's a good thing." Leah Carter raised an eyebrow but nodded. When she arrived at the office, Principal Jameson was waiting. He stood when she entered, offered a warm smile, and gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Savannah," he said, folding his hands. "We're putting together a committee, student voices, staff, parents. We want to review school traditions, events, leadership structures. I'd like you to be part of it." Leah Carter blinked, caught off guard. "Me?" He nodded. "What happened at prom? It wasn't just a prank gone wrong. It was a symptom. And we need help from students who understand what's at stake. You don't have to say yes right away. Just think about it." Leah Carter looked at him for a long moment, then simply said, "I'll think about it." That night, she sat on the porch steps, watching the sky turn a soft peachy orange. The Psychas were beginning their evening chorus. Her father came out with 2 glasses of iced tea and sat beside her. "How was your day?" he asked. "Interesting," she replied. "They want me on a committee to help fix the system." David Carter chuckled. "You going to do it?" Leah Carter tilted her head. "I don't know. Part of me wants to just move on. Let it all go. Leave the mess behind." He nodded. "That would be fair. You're not obligated to clean up after other people's mistakes." She looked down at her hands. "But what if I'm the only one who can keep it from happening again?" Her father took a sip of tea. "Then maybe it's not about cleaning up. Maybe it's about planting something new." The next day, Leah Carter said yes. In the final week of school, the committee held its first meeting in the media center. 8 students, 4 teachers, 2 administrators. Leah Carter sat across from a girl named Brielle Dawson. Once Sloan Whitmore's right hand, now quiet, observant, different. During introductions, Brielle Dawson hesitated, then said, "I'm here because I didn't speak up when I should have, and I want to change that." No one clapped. No one needed to. Leah Carter met her eyes, gave the smallest of nods, and that was enough. Over the next hour, they brainstormed ideas. Student equity training, anonymous reporting systems, revisiting the criteria for student honors. It wasn't groundbreaking, but it was a beginning. On the last day of school, students filed into the auditorium for the senior farewell assembly. The stage was decorated with blue and silver banners. The air buzzed with excitement. Principal Jameson took the podium and offered the usual congratulations, then surprised everyone by inviting Leah Carter to speak. She hadn't prepared anything, but she walked up slowly, calmly, and stood behind the microphone. For a moment, she looked out over the sea of faces, some familiar, some not, all watching. "I didn't plan to say anything," she began, her voice even. "But maybe that's the point. A lot of things happen when people don't speak up. Silence can protect you, but it can also hide what needs to be seen. This year, I learned that strength doesn't always look like shouting. Sometimes it looks like showing up again and again until the silence breaks on its own." She paused. "To the class of 2025, my wish for us is simple. That we see each other. Really see each other, because once you do, you can't unsee." She stepped back. The room was quiet for half a second. Then came the applause, not thunderous, but sincere, real. That evening, Leah Carter sat in her room, cap and gown folded neatly on the chair beside her, a soft breeze drifting through the open window. She picked up her phone and opened her messages. A new one from an unknown number. Just 3 words. "Thank you." She stared at it, unsure how to feel. Forgiveness wasn't a switch you could flip. But maybe it started like this. Small, unfinished, human. She put the phone down, not replying. Some things didn't need answers. Graduation day arrived hot and bright. Families packed the football field, fanning themselves with programs. David Carter sat in the 3rd row, sunglasses on, his posture proud but relaxed. When Savannah's name was called, he didn't shout. He just smiled. The kind of smile that holds decades of history, struggle, and hope. She crossed the stage, diploma in hand, head held high, and for the first time in months, she felt light. Like the weight she had carried, the judgment, the whispers, the silence had finally lifted. Later, as they drove home with the windows down and the summer air brushing their faces, David Carter asked, "So, what's next for you, kid?" Leah Carter thought for a moment, then smiled. "I think I just want to enjoy being me for a while. No speeches, no lessons, just life." He nodded. "You earned that." As the Camry rolled down the familiar streets of Mon, past the river and the red brick library and the grocery store where Leah Carter used to beg for peanut M&Ms at checkout, she looked out at the town that had tried to make her small and failed. She didn't need a tiara to feel like a queen. She didn't need revenge to feel powerful. She had something far more enduring. The knowledge that she had faced cruelty with grace, walked through injustice without bitterness, and came out not just intact, but wiser, stronger, and beautifully unbroken. And somewhere in a quiet corner of Riverside High, a tarnished crown gathered dust, forgotten on a shelf. Because the girl they tried to humiliate had already stepped into a different kind of royalty, the kind you don't vote for, the kind you earn. One quiet step at a Leah Carter didn't need to scream to be heard. She didn't need to fight back with fire. All she did was keep showing up, with quiet strength and unwavering grace. In a world quick to crown the loudest voices, she proved that resilience speaks volumes, even in silence. Her story is more than a cautionary tale. It's a call to look deeper, to question who we celebrate, and to stand tall even when no one claps. If her journey moved you, please support this message by hitting like, leaving a thoughtful comment, and subscribing to Soulful Stories V, where we tell stories that matter, and voices like Leah's are never overlooked. Now, let's hear from you. Should Belle have been permanently removed from school events? Do you think Leah should have confronted her bullies directly? And here's the real question. Can a school truly change if the culture stays silent? Let us know below. Because the conversation doesn't end here, it starts with you.